Hello and a warm cosmic welcome to Daily Astro Vibe. I'm Manoj Sharma, and I'm thrilled to have you here. Are you ready to unlock the secrets that the universe holds for you today? Do you want a daily dose of guidance to make the best decisions for your love life, career, finances, and well-being? Then you are in the right place. At Daily Astro Vibe, we bring you your daily horoscope prediction, precise, positive, and presented clearly in English, every single morning. No matter if you're an ambitious Aries or a dreamy Pisces, we cover all 12 signs to give you the clarity you need to seize the day with confidence. So, join our cosmic journey. Make sure to subscribe right now and hit that notification bell so you never miss your daily cosmic forecast. Let's connect with the cosmos, understand the stars, and vibe higher every day. Welcome aboard, and let the magic begin. Aries Zodiac, January 2026. January month prediction, health. A month during which the combination of stars facing you is quite favorably disposed towards your health affairs. Any predisposition to sudden acute illness, like fevers and inflammatory conditions, would get considerable relief. In fact, relief from most chronic ailments is indicated. This is as it should be in a favorable month. There is, however, a possibility, though an outside chance in such a stellar configuration, of an accident or a violent hurt. This should be guarded against in whatever manner possible. A fairly beneficial month, during which you would have a serious worry in the possibility of an accident. Finance. There is a lot of cheer for your financial prospects in the augury from the stars this month. Association with several gifted people of learning and spiritual stature would not only bring you substantial gains but would also impart a highly satisfying dimension of culture and a taste for higher spiritual achievements. Most of you would also be inclined to carry out your pursuits with a touch of boldness. This would also contribute to your success in a big way this month. The climate would also be quite congenial for investment and the launching of new ventures, and if you have any such plans on the anvil, now would be the time to put these into motion. Profession. The augury from the stars is none too favorable for your career prospects this month. There is a strong likelihood of a serious conflict with your colleagues. Such an eventuality should be prevented at all costs. Try to anticipate trouble areas and work your way around this. There would also be a lot of hard work, which would, however, appear to be a near pointless exercise, with expected gains eluding you. A good deal of travel is also indicated. But this, too, would be unfruitful. Expected gains would not come your way, though there is some indication that a trip eastward might bring you some minor advantages. Education. A month during which your educational pursuits would have smooth sailing, since the stars are quite favorable disposed. Those going in for higher education would not only find the necessary opportunities but also go on to well in their fields. Students of law, engineering and medicine would do quite well. In any case, most of you would have the drive and motivation required to get to the top. Most of you would also be blessed by a state of mind which will be absorbent, and this will greatly facilitate learning. Those sitting for competitive examination would also be able to get to their objectives, with just about the usual effort. Travel. This month you can look forward to reaping a rich harvest of gains from travels since the stars are quite favorably inclined for this. Students pursuing higher studies or training at far-off places or abroad would find their plans progressing smoothly. The more adventurous among you could make some very interesting and fruitful sojourns to places of their interest. The older folk would also have an opportune time to go and visit some holy places for Tirth Yatra. Business travel would be fruitful, most of it being by train or by road. East is the most favorable direction. Family. This month the affairs of your family would be fraught with difficulties of all sorts, since the combination of stars facing you is not favorable. You must clearly curb any tendency on your part towards groundless suspicions, since this would well take your relations with your spouse to a point of no return. Discipline yourself in a manner that broadens your mental outlook and makes it more tolerant. Some of you might develop serious tensions with your brothers. Here again, you should remain patient and refuse to get provoked into any kind of confrontation. Children's activities would be a source of a lot of worry. Poor performance at studies and games, etc., along with indiscipline, should be curbed, and their activities should be closely supervised. Children. Nothing particularly beneficial about the augury from the stars this month insofar as the prospects for your children are concerned. There is a distinct possibility that the wards of a great number of you would get into serious difficulties with their teachers, adversely affecting their studies. Parents should look into this and set things right. The performance of most of them at studies would not be very encouraging. Students of law going in for higher studies may have to face hurdles and obstacles of various descriptions in their pursuits. Taurus Zodiac, January 2026. January month prediction. Health. The augury from the stars is not very encouraging for your health this month. Those suffering from piles and chronic ailments of the chest would face a difficult situation. Far larger measure of attention would have to be paid to the treatment than usual. All precautions should be taken without fail. Further, there is the possibility of problems like muscular cramps bothering you. These would most probably be quite brief, but would nevertheless merit a close look and serious treatment. This is even more important in an unfavorable month because no chances should be taken in such a situation. Take care, since this is a somewhat difficult period for you. Finance. Nothing particularly favorable in the augury from the stars this month about your financial prospects. The circumstances would be such that delays and hurdles are likely to mar any progress that you might make through the sheer dint of your efforts and perseverance. But even more important would be a noticeable loss of self-confidence and courage that would virtually make you incapable of taking the initiative. This would reflect in all your efforts, which are unlikely to get you anywhere. Further, the climate would be far from congenial for fresh investment, and any such plans should be shelved for the time being. Profession. A month during which not only are the prospects for your career advancement non-existent, but if you are not careful you could well come several rungs down the ladder from your present station. There is a distinct possibility that some of you would be inclined to operate outside the law for quick profits. Should this come about, the consequences can only be disastrous. You must therefore firmly resolve not to succumb to such temptations. There is the further likelihood of serious difference with your colleagues. This again is something you must strive to avert. Travel is also indicated but would not bring any gains, though a northward journey might bring some minor advantages. Education. So far as your educational prospects are concerned, difficulties would tend to dominate the horizon, owing to a far from favorable stellar configuration facing you. Technical students who otherwise do well may well discover that to retain their ranking they may have to work much harder. Jobs demanding skill with hands would entail that you practice a great deal more than usual. Those appearing for any competitive examination would do well to go in for extra coaching. This could make all the difference between success and failure. Still, you should persevere, and if you do this there is every chance of overcoming all problems. Travel. This month travels may actually bring difficulties and losses to you apart from not being very gainful, since the augury from the stars is not very encouraging on this. There is a distinct possibility of an injury or some other physical trouble during the course of your sojourns. A good time to exercise all the care possible and to minimize risks. Indications are that apart from business or job-related travel, which would be quite without significant reward this month, you would undertake some other travel. This could be for pleasure or for adventure, like trekking. This is where risks are to be minimized in particular. You would tend to travel alone and almost entirely by road and by rail. Family. A month during which there would be very little of a pleasant note in the family atmosphere because the stars are not in a favorable mood. You must at least dispel pointless suspicions from your mind, failing which it is very likely that your relations with your spouse could become very unpleasant. Relations with brothers could also develop cracks and lead to extremely unpleasant situations. Be patient and stay away from confrontation. Children would add to your woes. Pay greater care and supervise their activities carefully, devoting more time and energy on this. Children. A month during which the affairs of your children would face several problems for parents, since the augury from the stars is not too helpful on this. There is a strong possibility of an injury or some sort of physical trouble to the wards of some of you. Those among them who are adventurously inclined or sportsmen would be especially vulnerable. However, despite this, some of them may do very well at sports. By the same standards, none of them would do very well at studies. In fact, those sitting for competitive examinations would do well to go in for extra coaching. Gemini Zodiac January 2026 January prediction. Health. This month the stars are quite favorably disposed towards your health and the augury is a beneficial one. There is, however, a note of caution which must be sounded to warn you against overexerting yourself. This is important, since any failure in this would snowball to problems of a much greater magnitude for you. You should, therefore, draw out a fresh schedule of activity which does not put undue strain on your system. Having done this, you should stick to such a schedule. This would solve your problems in a big way. Further, there is some chance of a back trouble bothering you. But this would be brief, and in any case get relief from your reworked schedule. A beneficial month, with no serious botheration. Finance. There is nothing particularly favorable for your financial prospects in the combination of stars facing you this month. In all your dealings, a lack of self-confidence and the ability to take initiatives would be missing. This would make for stagnation and retard all progress. There would also be a storage of any worthwhile opportunities. In fact, the climate will be totally unfavorable for investment and the launching of any new ventures. Any such plans should be shelved till a more opportune moment. The set of circumstances ahead does not augur too well for your financial prospects, and you would do well to maintain a low profile. Profession. This month the augury from the stars is quite favorable for your professional prospects. Practitioners of the fine arts and others of their ilk would have an extremely satisfying time. In fact, some of you may well go on to make a mark for yourselves with your contributions. In any case, whatever be your particular field of activity, you would work hard and your efforts would succeed in realizing your planned objectives for you. There would also be a good deal of travel. This again would be extremely fruitful, with the most favorable direction being west. All told, a favorable month during which you should go on to achieve something important professionally. Education. So far as your educational prospects are concerned, you might find a number of problems looming large on the horizon this month. There is a distinct possibility that most of you would lack the necessary drive and motivation to get to the top. This would reflect in your performance, and those sitting for any competitive examination would do well to combine their efforts with some extra coaching. This might make all the difference between success and failure. Students of both the arts and the sciences would have to put in a great deal of extra effort to retain their ranking. But persevere they must, refusing to give in. Travel. This month you can look forward to reaping a rich harvest of gains, since the stars are quite favorably placed for such are the possibilities. Your business or job would require that you undertake a good deal of travel. You would travel alone and almost entirely by road and rail. In these attempts you would be very successful and realize your goals. There are also indications of travel for purposes other than business. You can look forward to several journeys of an extremely pleasant nature, which would not only open new vistas of opportunity for you but also put you in touch with several new persons. East is the most favorable direction. Family. The affairs of your family would have fairly smooth sailing during the ensuing 12 months, since the stellar influences would be beneficial. Look forward to celebrating an auspicious event in the family with much fun and merriment. The family atmosphere would remain quite pleasant and cordial throughout the month, with harmony among its members and not a trace of discord in evidence. Some of you would gain significantly from your brother. In fact, this might well turn out to be the most important gain of the month. Financially also, you may look forward to a bright spell, with a rise in the overall family income of virtual certainty. Children. A month during which there are some grounds for you to exercise care, otherwise these would be quite beneficially influenced by favorable stellar influences. Most children would be a source of satisfaction to parents. They would do well in their studies and also fare well in their extracurricular activities. This behavior would also be quite pleasantly disciplined. Even those who are given to creating problems would tend to be much less of problem, etc. This is where your own supervision would also help. Most children would also remain injury prone. Cancer I Zodiac January 2026 January prediction. Health. This month you would have to look quite close and hard at the stars to find anything encouraging about your health. Those predisposed to chronic disorders like rheumatism and irregularities like flatulence and excessive wind in the digestive tract will face problems larger than usual. Quite obviously you would have to pay far greater heed to the treatment of these ailments. Further, there are grounds to apprehend the fact that your bounds may give you trouble. Here again greater heed would have to be paid to the treatment and precautionary measures taken to avert the problems. Take care, since the circumstances are hardly favorable for you. Finance. Nothing particularly favorable in the augury from the stars this month, insofar as your financial prospects are concerned. Writers, poets, and others of their caliber would do well to make provisions for a lean period, because this would stand them in good stead this coming month. Most important, this month you would surely lack whatever normal self-confidence you possess, and also miss the ability to take the initiative. This would make for stagnation and no growth. The climate would also not be at all congenial for the investment and launching of new ventures, which should be shelved for a more opportune moment. Profession. An excellent period is in the offing for the advancement of your career possibilities. Those inclined towards artistic endeavors and practitioners of the fine arts would have a satisfying period of creative pursuits. In fact, some of you may well go on to make a mark for yourselves with your contributions. In any case, whatever your line of work, you would approach your objectives with bold confidence that would quickly see you realizing your objectives. In fact, This boldness of a negative implication as well in that there is an element of risk is characteristic involved. You must, therefore, avoid pointless risk. Travel would also prove quite beneficial. Education. Nothing particularly beneficial about the augury from the stars this month, insofar as your educational prospects are concerned. Most of you would lack the necessary drive and motivation which is necessary for reaching the top. Therefore, during this period you would have to tap your inner resources to derive the required inspiration. Students of both arts and the sciences would have to put in a good deal of extra effort to maintain your ranking. This would also apply to people sitting for any competitive examination. They would do well to go in for extra coaching, because this could be the decisive factor. Travel. Not much percentage in travel for you this month since the stars are not very helpful about this aspect of the forecast for the coming month. There is a likelihood of an injury or some other physical trouble during the course of your journeys. Care should be exercised and risk minimized. Your job or business would require that you travel a fair amount, though this effort could go largely unrewarded, since the turn of events would just not be favorable. You would travel alone and almost entirely by rail or by road. The most favorable direction would be east, though during the coming period this may not all that helpful. Family. The affairs of your family would be fraught with difficulties and inopportune influences practically throughout the month, since the stars facing you are far from favorable. You must firmly curb any tendency to pointless suspicions, for this could well take your relations with your spouse to the stars, as they say. Therefore, discipline yourself on this score, and inculcate a more tolerant, generous attitude of mind. Some of you would also have serious differences with your brothers. Here again, patience and refusal to be provoked into any kind of confrontation would go a long way in preventing such an occurrence. Children would not help either, and their activities would have to carefully supervised. Children. Nothing particularly favorable about the coming month insofar as the prospects for your children are concerned, since the augury from the stars is not too favorable on this score. This would not be a month of high performance. The real students would need a great deal of extra help and encouragement to pull on. In fact, even those who are normally bright would find their performance slipping. The behavior of most of them would also be quite unruly, with some of them getting into fights with their brother. Parents should deal with this quite firmly. Leo Zodiac, January 2026. January prediction. Health. This month the combination of stars facing you is quite auspicious and favorable for your health affairs. Those with a predisposition to sudden acute illness like fevers and inflammations will get considerable relief from their troubles. Such bouts of illness will not bother you. However, it is important that all caution is not thrown to the winds. Normal caution should be exercised. There are grounds to be careful about an eye infection which might trouble you briefly. Any preventive action that can be taken should be gone through. This apart, there is really nothing much to worry about, and in all probability you will face no serious health hazard during this period. Finance. A month that has little cheer for your financial prospects, since the stars are not in an obliging mood. Any litigation or dispute that you might be involved in would quite probably be decided against you. This could result in a loss, and, therefore, you should strive to get the decision postponed to a later and more favorable time. The climate would also not be favorable for investment and the launching of new ventures, and, therefore, any such plans should be shelved for the time being. Clearly an unfavorable set of circumstances ahead of you during the coming month, and you would do well to maintain a low financial profile. Profession. The configuration of stars facing you during the coming month is hardly propitious for your career prospects. There is a distinct chance that you would have serious differences with your colleagues, even to the extent of creating unpleasant situations. You would also tend to be somewhat over-ambitious in your approach. This has a built-in element of risk for you which should be borne in mind. In fact, some restraint would be called for. You would tend to work quite hard and travel a lot for your planned objectives. However, there is little likelihood that you would be able to realize these, simply because of the unfavorable set of circumstances you would be in. Education. An excellent month insofar as your educational endeavors are concerned, during which some of you would score notable success. Possessing the necessary drive and motivation, you would proceed with your pursuits in a dynamic manner. Technical students would do very well in their fields. In addition, some of them could well get good marks in some field which demands dexterity. Riding a wave of success, those sitting for any competitive examination would do very well. Further, most of you would be blessed with an absorbent frame of mind, which will greatly facilitate learning. This would also contribute to an excellent performance. Travel. A month during which your travels would not be as rewarding as would normally be the case since you face an unfavorable combination of stars. Though you would undertake a fair amount of travel in connection with your job or business, you may find your efforts not getting anywhere. Your initiative may not be very useful either. You would travel alone and almost entirely by road or by rail. The most favorable direction would be east by air during this period, though even this may not be very helpful. Further, there is the likelihood of an injury or some other physical trouble during the course of your sojourn. Family. Nothing particularly favorable about the augury from the stars this month, since the stars are not particularly helpful. There is a distinct possibility that some of you would develop strained relations with your brothers, even to the extent to bringing about an extremely unpleasant situation. You must, therefore, avoid trouble spots, and refuse to be provoked into any kind of confrontation. This should help to some extent. Further, curb your fancies of suspicion, for this could well take your relations with your spouse to the doldrums. Discipline yourself to be more tolerant and open in your outlook. Children's activities would also require closer supervision. Pay more heed to their affairs both in terms of time and energy. Children. This month the affairs of your children would coast along fairly smoothly, though some careful planning might improve results a great deal, since such are the stellar influences this month. Most of them would perform above averagely both at studies and in extracurricular activities. Discipline and obedience may not be very much in evidence, yet some of them may display tremendous initiative and the capacity for original thinking and action. Parents must distinguish between their method in madness and sheer gross indiscipline. The first should be encouraged while the second firmly dealt with. Most children would also be injury-prone. Virgo Zodiac, January 2026. January prediction. Health. You have a month which holds out fairly encouraging prospects for your health. Even those with a tendency to having their digestive organs easily disturbed will experience relief from their troubles, as will also people with a predisposition to coughs, colds, and bronchitis. This means improvement of the general condition. You may have some minor trouble getting muscular cramps. This would, however, be short-lived and pose no serious health problems. A good month, during which with just about normal care and attention, you will remain quite fit. Finance. Nothing very favorable in the augury from the stars this month, insofar as your financial prospects are concerned. The normal self-confidence and the ability to take the initiative would desert you this month, impeding progress and creating stagnation. The spell of circumstances would be quite unhelpful, and there would be nothing most of you could do except to be patient and persevere with your efforts. The time may be particularly unhelpful for those in the transport industry. The climate is not likely to be very congenial for investment and new venture. As such, any plans of this nature should be shelved and carried out at a more favorable point of time. Profession. A month that will see you performing at your peak and achieving extremely satisfactory results. You will be endowed with the instinct of a hunter, and will zero in into your targets with single-minded efficiency. Success would naturally follow. For the realization of your objectives, you would tend to work very hard. This would also mean a great deal of travel, all of which would prove beneficial. The most favorable direction for this is west. You would have a boldness of approach which would also have a built-in element of risk. You should be a little careful and not let adventure carry you off your feet. Exercise some restraint on this score. Education. An excellent month during which most of you would do well in your educational pursuits, since the stars are in an obliging mood. Most important, a majority of you would have the necessary motivation and drive to get to the top. This would do wonders for your morale. Those sitting for any competitive examination would benefit greatly from such a mental outlook. Practically all of you would also be blessed with clarity of thought and emotional stability that would greatly facilitate learning. Students of both arts and the sciences can expect to get very encouraging results. Some of you may score notable success. Travel. Not a month during which you are likely to reap any sizable benefits from travel, since the stars are not too well placed. There is a likelihood that you would undertake some wholly unnecessary travel that would be quite wasteful. Your job or business would require that you travel a good deal. However, you would not be able to achieve much success in these efforts. Further, there is a distinct possibility of injury or some other physical trouble during the course of your sojourns. Exercise care and minimize risk. You would travel alone and almost entirely by train or by road. East is the most favorable direction, though it may not be beneficial for you much this month. Family. A fairly beneficial month for your family affairs, since the stars are favorably disposed. Some of you would gain significantly from your brothers. In fact, this could well turn out to be the most important gain of the month. The family atmosphere would remain quite pleasant with harmony among the members, and few, if any, signs of discord and tension. Financially, also, you all can look forward to doing quite well, with a rise in the overall family income of virtual certainty. Children would perform in a satisfactory manner and give you cause for some satisfaction. Overall, a beneficial month. Children. This month the affairs of your children would coast along fairly smoothly, since the combination of stars facing you are quite favorable. Most children would be a source of satisfaction to their parents. They would behave in an attractive manner. However, at least a few of them might display extraordinary talents. Distinguish between this and sheer gross indiscipline. Whereas the first would be encouraged, the second should be firmly dealt with. Most children would also be prone to injuries. Care should be taken on this score. Libra Zodiac, January 2026. January prediction. Health. This month the combination of stars facing you does not augur too well for your health. There are chances that owing to overexertion and exhaustion, you might come to a state of general debility and even nervous disorder. This you must guard against at all cost. Draw out a fresh schedule of activity, which does not unduly strain your system. You must firmly stick to such a schedule, failing which you would only have yourself to blame. Further, any predisposition to chronic ailments like rheumatism would have to be treated with far greater care since these would most likely take a turn for the worse. Take care, since there are troublesome times ahead. Finance. This month the configuration of stars facing you is not in an obliging mood, and as such, there is nothing particularly bright about your financial prospects. Most of you would lack your normal self-confidence, which would adversely affect your ability to take the initiative. This would create a certain amount of stagnation and stop all forward growth. The climate would also be far from congenial for investment and launching of new ventures. As such, any such plans should be shelved for a late and more propitious period. Writers, poets and others of their caliber would do well to make provisions for a lean spell, because such foresight could greatly help this coming month. Profession. Nothing particularly auspicious about the augury for your professional betterment this month. You would tend to travel a great deal, but the entire exercise would be virtually pointless, and would fail to bear fruit, though there might be some minor percentage for you in a journey westwards. You have to guard against getting into serious conflict with your colleagues, whether in business or in service. Exercise patience and work your way round trouble spots. Your bold approach to work may have an inbuilt element of risk. This is another area in which some preventive action is required. You would tend to work hard, but this would fail to realize your planned objectives because the circumstances simply aren't favorable. Be patient. Education. This month your educational endeavors would have to go over a rough patch, and problems may loom quite large over the horizon. Most significantly, most of you will not have the necessary drive and motivation for getting to the top. This would of course reflect in your performance. Those sitting for competitive examinations would do well to go in for extra coaching, since this could turn out to be the deciding factor. Students of both arts and the sciences would have to put in a lot of extra effort to maintain their ranking. Further, to get the required motivation and drive, most of you would have to look onwards for inspiration. Some determination and a little perseverance would go a long way to help matters. Travel. There are excellent chances of sizable gains from travel since the stars are quite favorably inclined. Your business would require that you undertake a fair amount of travel. You would travel alone and almost entirely by road or by rail. In these attempts you would be very successful in realizing your objectives fully. Apart from this, you would also travel for pleasure. The more adventurously inclined may go on a talk or some other expedition. A family holiday would be very pleasant. East is the most favorable direction. Family. This month the affairs of your family would have rough going, because the configuration of stars you would face during the coming 12 months is hardly favorable. Some of you would get into serious trouble with your brothers to the extent of getting into an extremely unpleasant situation. Refuse to get provoked and exercise patience. Further, you should curb any tendency to have worthless suspicions, for this could well take your relations with your spouse to a point of no return. Discipline yourself on this score. Children would also behave in a manner that would add to your woes. Supervise their activities with much greater care. This would call for greater attention in terms of time and energy. Children. A month during which the affairs of your children would not proceed smoothly, since the stars are not too favorably placed. Most of the wards of you people would tend to behave in an unruly and disobedient manner. Some of them may have serious fights with their brother. Parents must deal with this very firmly. The performance at studies of most of them would be below average. Those sitting for competitive examinations would only stand a reasonable chance of success. They should go in for extra coaching and work very hard. Students of commerce and accountancy would have a difficult time. Scorpio Zodiac, January 2026. January prediction. Health. A beneficial month, in so far as your health is concerned. The combination of stars facing you this month is quite favorably disposed. Any predisposition to chronic disorders like rheumatism and complaints of the digestive system like flatulence and excessive wind would be considerably relieved. This is as it should be in a favorable month. However, there are grounds to have any attack of cough seriously examined for other complications. This is one note of caution that might come in handy this month. Apart from this, you really have no cause for worry, since it is unlikely that any serious health problem would come up this month. Finance. This month you should have several useful opportunities for advancing your financial prospects. Several opportunities are likely to come your way, which would bring you quick gains. These are not likely to be huge profits but would be middle-sized gains. Those engaged in any segment of the transport industry would especially stand to gain. This would also be true of dealers in gemstones and those in general trading. This month your efforts would be characterized by a touch of boldness. That would show through in all your activities. This could well be your most important asset during this period, and would be greatly responsible for your success. Profession. The stars are not in an obliging mood, and as such your professional prospects are none too bright. You would have to work quite hard, and yet there would be little likelihood of achieving your goals. Your gusto and charisma would fail to move your subordinates and workers, and thereby impair your capacity to get work done. All this would leave you quite dissatisfied. Other factors would add to the dissatisfaction, among would be travel, because though there would be a lot of travel, this would be singularly unfruitful, though a journey southwards might prove beneficial. Overall, a month during which you would have to be patient till the unfavorable period is over. Education. An excellent month for your educational pursuits, during which some of you could well go on to score some notable success. Most of you would have the drive and motivation to get to the top, something that will immensely benefit those sitting for any competitive examination. They can virtually count on success. Technical students, studying electrical engineering, electronics, medicine, especially surgery, would do very well. So will those pursuing dance, drama, music, painting, sculpture and the other fine arts. Most of you will also be blessed with a clarity of mind which will greatly facilitate learning. Travel. Not much percentage of travel for you this month, since the stars are quite unhelpful on this aspect of the forecast for you this month. Not only would you undertake travel related to your business on job which may not be very helpful in realizing your objectives, but you may also make several journeys which would be quite unnecessary and wasteful. Further, there is the danger of an injury or some other physical trouble while on your travels. You should therefore take the least possible risks. You would travel alone and almost unlikely by road or by rail. The most favorable direction would be east, though this may not be very beneficial either. Family. Quite an auspicious period in the offing for your family during the coming month, since the stars are quite favorably disposed towards you. Look forward to celebrating an auspicious event in the family. Even otherwise, the family atmosphere would remain quite pleasant and with harmony among the members and not a trace of discord in evidence. Some of you would also gain significantly from your brother. In fact, this could well turn out to be the most significant gain of the month. Financially also, you all would fare quite well, with a rise in the overall family income of virtual certainty. Children. An excellent month for your children, during which there may be problems, but these notwithstanding they could well go on to achieve a great deal, since the stars are favorably disposed. Children may not be very obedient or disciplined, but at least some of them would display a tremendous amount of initiative and capacity for thinking and effort. Parents must, however, distinguish between methods in madness and chaos. The first should be encouraged and the second firmly dealt with. Most children may also be prone to injuries. Sagittarius Zodiac, January 2026. January prediction. Health. The stars do not forecast problems for your health, and the augury is auspicious indeed, with a little caution thrown in. There are some grounds to be apprehensive about sudden acute ailments like fever or inflammations. These should be treated without delay. There are no grounds for any serious worry, but still the immediate treatment indicated is equally essential. Further, under the circumstances, that is in a favorable period when the stars are beneficially placed, there may be no danger, although for you there is possibility of some trouble associated with the head. It would, therefore, do no harm to have a tonic for the head, and treat this merely as a precautionary measure. Finance. A somewhat trying period ahead of you insofar as your financial prospects are concerned, and the stars are not likely to be very helpful. There would be less self-confidence and courage, which would make you incapable of much initiative. This would be reflected in all your efforts, which will get nowhere near success. Further, the circumstances would not help much either. Delays and hurdles would mar any progress that you might make through the dint of your effort. In short, a negative spell of circumstances. The climate would also be far from congenial for investment. Therefore, if you have any plans, shelve them, and further stay away from risks of all sorts. Profession. The signs for your professional prospects are not very propitious. There would be a lot of travel, but the entire exercise could be quite pointless, since it is unlikely to bear much fruit. Still, there are some chance of a journey eastward bringing in some gains. Also, your style work could be fraught with an element of risk which should be suitably attended to prevent any serious eventuality. A good deal of hard work will fail to get you any nearer to your objectives. Exercise patience. Also, there is a distinct possibility of a serious conflict with some of your colleagues. With cool-headed behavior you can avoid such unpleasant situations. Education. Nothing very favorable about the augury from the stars, insofar as your education prospects for this month are concerned. Technical students might have to work much harder to retain their normal ranking. Most of you would also not have sufficient drive and motivation to get to the top. This is something you would have to work up for and form your own inner resources. With grit and determination this can be done. Those sitting for a competitive examination would also have problems and they would do well to go in for extra coaching. This might turn out to be the deciding factor. This month you must be determined to do well, and persevere in your efforts. Travel. Not a very fruitful month for gains from travel since the augury from the stars is none too favorable on this score. Business or jobs requirements would make it necessary for you to travel around the country a good deal. You would travel alone, and almost all of it would be by train or by road. These efforts will, however, be nowhere near as successful as they would be in a normal month. Further, there is a distinct possibility of an injury or some other physical trouble during the course of your sojourns. The more adventurously inclined would be more likely to face difficulties of this nature. The most favorable direction would be east. Roughly, this too may not be a beneficial month. Family. This month your family would face rough weather on most fronts, because the configuration of stars facing you is far from favorable. Some of you would see your relations with your brothers go bitter, to the extent that an extremely unpleasant situation could come about. Exercise patience and refuse to be provoked into any kind of confrontation. Further, you must not allow pointless suspicions to take hold of you, facing which your relations with your wife could develop serious tensions. Children would not help very much either. You should pay much greater attention and supervise their activities much more carefully. Children. A month during which parents have much to be careful about insofar as the affairs of their children are concerned, since the stars are not too favorable placed. There is a distinct possibility of an injury or some other physical trouble to the wards of a large number of you people. This would be especially true of those who are adventurously inclined, such as sportsmen. Such among your wards must be dissuaded from taking unnecessary risks. The fair percentage of them would also tend to behave in an unusual manner, quarreling with their brothers and creating a nuisance. Parents should deal with this very firmly. God bless you. Capricorn Zodiac, January 2026. January prediction. Health. This month you would have to look quite close and hard at the stars to discern any signs of encouragement for your health. Those with cold, moist hands and cold feet will just have to keep warmer somehow, because their troubles may be aggravated. Chronic disorders of the chest would also give more than the usual amount of trouble. Any persistent cold or cough should be seriously treated and thoroughly examined for complications. Further, there are chances that bouts of muscular cramps would bother you, and this would have to be treated promptly. The turn of events is none too favorable, and as such you should be careful about your health during this period. Finance. The combination of stars facing you this month are not favorably inclined towards your financial prospects. Your normal self-confidence would not be there to bolster your efforts this month, and also missing would be the ability to take the initiative, bringing all progress to a halt. Under the circumstances, most of you would have no choice but to be patient and persevere with their efforts. The climate would also not be very congenial for investment and for launching new ventures, and as such, any plans of this sort should be shelved for the time being. Profession. The augury from the stars is not encouraging for your professional prospects. There is a distinct possibility of a serious rift between you and your colleagues. This could become very unpleasant, and therefore, you must work to prevent such an eventuality. You would also work quite hard, but your efforts will not be able to help you in the realization of your objectives. This would naturally make for dissatisfaction at your lot. This sort of thwarting of normal activity in terms of denial of rewards could make you over-adventurous. This has an element of risk for you. Therefore, you must restrain yourself from pointless adventurous enterprises. Education. Nothing particularly encouraging about the augury from the stars this month insofar as your educational prospects are concerned. Those going in for higher education would face problems of one sort or the other, delaying their progress. Most of you may also not have the drive and motivation required to get to the top. This would again hamper progress. This would also take away the competitive edge from your pursuits. Those sitting for competitive examinations would do well to go in for extra coaching, since this could well turn out to be the deciding factor. Also, some of you may be influenced adversely in a manner that would make you self-assertive and headstrong with your teachers. Guard against such tendencies. Travel. An excellent month in which to reap a rich harvest of gains since the augury from the stars is quite favorable on this score. You might go on a pilgrimage to some holy place that is not easily accessible. That spirit of adventure could affect you this month. This apart, if you have already gone on a trek or such like expedition, a field day is in the offing for you this month. Students wanting to pursue higher studies or training abroad or in some far-off places within the country can look forward to fairly smooth progress in their efforts. East is the most favorable direction. Family. Nothing particularly favorable about the augury from the stars this month insofar as your family welfare is concerned. Some of you would develop serious tensions with your brothers, even leading to extremely unpleasant situations. You must, therefore, exercise patience and refuse to get provoked into any kind of conflict. Further, you must fairly curb any tendency towards groundless suspicions since this would well take your relations with your spouse to the doldrums. Discipline yourself in a manner that would make your outlook more tolerant and open. Children's activities may cause serious tension. Indiscipline and poor performance at studies should be corrected by carefully supervising their activities. Children. A month during which parents would have to solve quite a few of their children's problems since the stars are not too favorably inclined. The wards of quite a few among you all would get into serious difficulties with their teachers adversely affecting their studies. Parents must actively intervene and set matters right. This would not be a month of high performance at studies. Most of the wards would need help and encouragement to pull on. Students of law pursuing higher studies would face a particularly difficult set of circumstances. However, they must persevere in their pursuits. God bless you. Aquarius Zodiac, January 2026. January prediction. Health. This month the augury from the stars is quite favorable for your health. However, there is a note of caution to be sounded to warn you against overexertion. This must be avoided because if neglected the problems could somewhat into one massive health problems. You should set about the task of drawing out a schedule of activity which does not unduly strain your system. Having done this, you must stick to such a schedule firmly. This is in fact the solution to most of your problems. There is the further likelihood of some trouble from bouts of muscular cramps. This would, however, be quite brief. A beneficial month, where you do not have any serious worry. Finance. The combination of stars facing you would bring a great deal of cheer to your financial prospects this month. Some of you would have a way of managing your subordinates, workers, or just simply people below you in the social strata, in a manner enabling you to derive optimum benefit from their services. This would be a big gain. Further, there is every likelihood of a big boon coming your way from some elderly gentlemen. Other sudden though unexpected gains can also not be ruled out. The climate would also be quite congenial for investment and new ventures. Profession. Nothing particularly helpful in the augury from the stars this month insofar as your professional prospects are concerned. You will have to guard against serious differences with your colleagues, of which there is a distinct likelihood. As far as possible, try and foresee difficult spots and steer a course away from them. There would also be a good deal of travel, which would appear to be a pointless exercise bearing no fruit. There is further the likelihood of some of you being tempted to operate outside the law for quick profits. Such tendencies should be firmly curbed, failing which you would have only yourself to blame for the disastrous consequences that are bound to follow. Education. Nothing very encouraging about the augury from the stars insofar as your educational prospects are concerned. Most of you would lack the drive and motivation necessary to get to the top. This would take away the decisive competitive edge from your efforts. Therefore, those sitting for any competitive examination should go in for special coaching, since this could well be the deciding factor for success. Further, some of you may be adversely influenced in a manner that would make you self-assertive and headstrong with your teachers and seniors. You must guard against such tendencies. Travel. A month during which the prospect of gains from travel are from bright, since the augury from the stars is not very helpful. Your job or business would require that you undertake a fair amount of travel. These efforts, however, would not be very rewarding since the turn of events would be unfavorable. You would travel alone and almost entirely by road and by rail. The most favorable direction would be east, though this month gains for this too would not measure up to expectations. Further, there is a likelihood of an injury on some other sojourns. Take precautions and minimize risk. Family. Nothing particularly beneficial about the augury from the stars this month so far as your family welfare is concerned. Some of you would develop serious tensions in your relations with your brothers. You must remain patient and refuse to get provoked into any sort of a confrontation. Further, you must curb any tendency towards groundless suspicions, for this can bring your relations with your spouse to a point of no return. Discipline yourself in a manner so as to inoculate a tolerant and open frame of mind. Children, too, would add to your worries. Their performance in studies and gains, etc., may not be up to the mark. Supervise their activities carefully and much more closely. Children. This month the affairs of your children would require much closer monitoring, though the period would be quite beneficial for them, since the stars are quite favorable placed. The undisciplined would need special attention. They would need to be more firmly distinguished. Apart from this, some of them would perform in a fairly acceptable manner at studies and extracurricular activities, though there may be a good deal of carelessness in evidence. This is where supervision would improve things further. Most children would be injury-prone and suitable care should be taken. God bless you. Pisces Zodiac, January 2026. January prediction. Health. This month the combination of stars facing you is one that is quite favorable and augurs well for your health. Those prone to chronic disorders like rheumatism and irregularities like flatulence and excessive wind in the digestive tract would get relief from their troubles. There are chances of suffering from bouts of cramps. Though short-lived, such bouts should be properly treated. The rest is quite satisfactory, and in fact you do not have a chance of any serious health problem during the month. Finance. This month the turn of events is bound to favor your financial prospects. Some of you would have a big way of managing your subordinates or workers, or even people simply below you in the social strata, in a manner that will enable you to derive optimum benefit from their services. This would be a very big gain for you. Further, there is every chance of a big boon coming to you from some elderly gentleman. Some other sudden and unexpected gain can also not be ruled out. With a good deal of self-confidence, you would be in a position to carry out your efforts with a touch of boldness. Profession. This month the configuration of stars facing you is in an obliging mood, and will bless your career with good prospects. You would go for your goals with dynamic efficiency and work hard for the realization of your objectives. This will meet with notable success. There would also be a good deal of travel of a beneficial nature. The most advantageous direction would be west. Whether in business or service, all of you would be quite secure in your profession. Chemists and chemical engineers might have a particularly useful time. Nature lovers can also look forward to an interesting spell of activity. Education. Nothing particularly favorable about the augury from the stars insofar as your educational pursuits are concerned. There is a possibility that some of you would be adversely affected in a manner that you become self-assertive and headstrong towards your teachers and seniors. You must guard against such tendencies. There would be a lot of hard work involved, and the fact that most of you would lack the drive and motivation necessary to get to the top is not going to help at all. This would take away the competitive edge from your efforts. Those sitting for any competitive examination should therefore go in for some special coaching to ensure success. Travel. A month during which the stars do not prophesy any sizable gains from travels for you. There is a likelihood of an injury or some other physical trouble during the course of your sojourns. You must therefore exercise caution and minimize risks. This month your business or job-related travels, which you would have to undertake, would not be very successful, and you could well find your performance way below the target. This apart, travel for pleasure would not be too inspiring either. Even the new opportunities that normally keep coming up on travels would be missing. The most favorable direction would be east, though this may not benefit you much either. Family. A fairly pleasant month for your family since the stars are favorably disposed. There is the likelihood that someone below you socially would do your family a good turn that could prove extremely beneficial. There is the further likelihood of some of you gaining substantially from your brothers. The family atmosphere would also remain quite pleasant and cheerful with harmony among the members. Financially too, you all would fare quite well, with a rise in the overall family income of virtual certainty. Children would go on to do well in their studies and other extracurricular activities, giving no cause for worry. Children. A month during which the affairs of your children are unlikely to proceed smoothly since the stars are not favorably inclined. This would not be a month of high performance at studies. In fact, those who are weak at studies may require a great deal of help and encouragement to pull on this month. Not only this, even the brighter among them may not be able to achieve the normal kind of results. However, those pursuing some practical trade or apprenticeship would manage to do relatively better. The behavior of most of them would also leave much to be desired, displaying less respect towards their elders. God bless you. That's your today's cosmic forecast. I sincerely hope these insights help you vibe higher every day. Did your prediction resonate with you? Let me know in the comments below. And if you liked this daily update, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Daily Astro Vibe for your next dose of destiny tomorrow. Until then, may the stars align for you. See you next time.